Good morning, New York. Thank you so much for being here. Good day to everyone who is watching online, wherever you are in the world. I want to start today with a little bit of a story. So a couple of months ago, I was at a music festival with my dad. Don't worry, I'm aware this isn't a stand-up routine. It's going to seem like it to begin with. We will get onto something relevant in a minute. And between acts, we decide to go and get a drink, as sort of standard. And my dad turns around and he goes, "Oh, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. They've got these like robot beer vendors here." And I was like, "That's cool." It's cool for two reasons. One, I work in robotics and that's cool. And two, this is a man who struggles to download things from an app store. And if he thinks it's good, it's probably good automation. So naturally, my brain assumes something like this is going to be greeting us outside. This kind of handling robotics is going to be really cool. So it's not, because this is not design-wise particularly practical. It looks a little bit more like this. I mean, it's not a fridge. It's kind of vending machine shaped. It's got a bit of a screen and an interface, and a cup drops down behind a barrier, pours you a beer, the barrier disappears, and you grab it and go, right? So imagine something like this. So we drift out of the venue, and we head out there, and there's 10 of these machines in this small area, right, stacked up, and like 7 out of the 10 are being used. So because I'm very cool, my first thought is, that's some good capacity planning from the service designers there. Well done. And I wander straight up, and I can get there, and within a few clicks of a button, I've managed to order me and my old man a beer, and I've put down, roughly the price of a house deposit for it at a music festival. And I start to get a little bit worried, right? Because this screen, not this screen exactly, I didn't take pictures at the time because I wasn't smart enough to realize I'd talk about it at a conference. But something like this pops up. I'm not a designer. No one's going to hire me to be a designer off the back of this. This cup pops down, it starts filling with beer, and I used to be a barman, right? And I can tell that this is not going to be a great beer, right? I'm going to end up with half a cup of beer and half a cup of foam, which normally being British and polite, I'd probably passive-aggressively take, mumble under my breath, and go about my day, right? But it's at a music festival, so I'm paid a lot of money for this. But before I can start worrying about this, some guy rocks up from behind. I assume he worked at the place, right? And he goes, "Don't worry about it. This always happens on the first pour after the machine's had a break. Let me fix that for you." So he clicks in the top left of this screen where there is no button, but there's a secret admin button. Amazing, right? And it pops up a little login code, and he puts 4 digits in that, if I was smart, I'd have tried to work out so I could get another beer later at slightly less of the price. And it pops up this admin interface that, for any designer looking at it, they'd have cried. It was filled with buttons, and the copy on the buttons was huge, and it told you exactly what it was going to do. But it's perfect B2B design, right? This user comes in, they press this, they put the login code in, and he has access to do anything on this machine to fix the issue that I've got. So within just a couple of minutes, or within a few seconds, he's managed to rectify this situation. I take my beer, he hangs around to see if the second one pours correctly, and it does, which I'm also very impressed by. His edge case of this only happens for the first beer after a break seems to be true, right? And so we walk away, myself and my dad, beers in hand, to enjoy the rest of the evening, having actually had a very good experience with automation where actually it had mostly gone wrong. And that's what I kind of want to talk to you about today. So I'm going to talk to you about how, when you are asked, whether it's in software or hardware, to essentially automate out what a person used to do, right, and deliver just a user and a service. So rather than this, where you end up with this, we're being asked to do this a lot, right, across software, across hardware, because this is good from an operational expenses perspective, right? What I'm going to take you through is the process that I go through at Ocado Technology to try and bake in essentially what you lose in this, which is how you retain human intuition. Because as you automate people out of your processes, what you're actually automating out is your best defense against edge cases, right? Human intuition to look at a system and go, "I can fix that and work around it. Don't worry about that. Let me just do this and ping it." So, 4 steps, 15 minutes. 4 minutes a step, slightly over time. Perfect. So, we are going to go through, and starting with step 0 of 1, 2, 3, and 4, because I know how to build slides. When you are doing your discovery on this, right, step 0 is the same as it would be in any other product discovery. Work out what your main workflow is going to be and your happy path. So let's take the beer example. Customer chooses a drink type. Well, in this case, a beer. They choose a brand, right, and a quantity. The UI shows you a total price that once you've balked at it, you do confirm. You tap a card or a phone or a watch, or your face, or a ring, or whatever it is today for payment, right? And then payment gets confirmed, and you have your outcome, right, which is a well-poured drink, okay? This is your happy path. Now, when you're automating something like this, if this is all you do as discovery, right, you are never going to build something that can adapt beyond its happy path. You end up with me walking away from this machine with half a beer and quite a lot of frustration, right? So, this is how you fix that. Step one, you've got to go and learn what it is you're losing by getting rid of your user, which can feel slightly awkward in some situations, because you're basically going and doing massive contextual inquiry for potentially people that you're going to scale back from, right? But it's important to go and work out what they're doing right now. And the things that you're looking out for when you run this contextual inquiry are like the little nuances of the job, right? You spend time with them, the little things where they go, don't worry about it, that kind of happens, but this is what we do to fix it. This is my workaround, this is my hack, right? You're trying to basically come out at the end of step one here, step one of two, with a list of problems, right? A list of the common edge cases that you will get. And when you're automating things and you don't have a user to use intuition to like get you past those edge cases, you actually do have to start baking this in right from early discovery, right? We are no longer, in an automation world, in a safe enough space to go, I won't worry about the edge cases. We'll worry about it later, right? If you are removing your intuitive human who can get you past those things, you are going to run into a world of pain. What you also get is a few of like the current solutions that these people are doing, right? The little things that they do that get them through this and make it work, right? So essentially, that's it for step one. Go do a big contextual inquiry. It might be in a warehouse. I do a lot of them in warehouses. You might get lucky and get to go and do it in a nice bar like this. If anyone's hiring to do automated UX research with bars, call me. But what you should have done by now is mapped out your happy path, right? You should have your main end user goal in the front of your mind, right, as you would normally with product development. You've worked out where things are going to go wrong, and you've started to have a bit of an idea about how you might be able to solve your way around them. The first time that we did this, it caused untold amounts of stress in mine and my product team's heads, right? Because we went to look at essentially a like driverless delivery system and how we were going to integrate this. And by the end of our what are all the things that could go wrong, we had basically an admin interface we thought was going to have 1,000 buttons on it to fix everything. We also thought we were going to have to re-architect an entire building, which is slightly outside of our remit. So it was a bit of panic, but we realized that it's absolutely fine because step two is something we do all day, every day, and we have to be good at, right? Once you have your list of things that are going wrong or could go wrong that you now need to bake into your product in some way, you have to work out what are the battles worth fighting for and what aren't the battles worth fighting for. All of you are aware of this. All of you do lots of prioritization, right? So we know that features are not created equal, but in this case, your edge cases are not created equal, right? So the issues that you've got also need to be prioritized in some way. So the way I like to do this, because I love a whiteboarding session, I love getting people into the office and writing all over the walls, sometimes forgetting which ones are just paint and which ones are the whiteboard. Sorry, facilities. Get product in a room because they have the vision side of things. Get engineering in the room because they can bring you back to reality. Have UX in the room to come up with crazy ideas and crazy researchers and designers like me, right? Really crucially, if you can, get your commercial team in this room as well, because they will turn around and be like, we're not paying for that. And you have to convince them that they should maybe pay for that. But bring them along on the journey, right? It's easier to convince them right now when you can turn around and go, if we build it just to the happy path, no one is happy, right? Here are all the things we need to bake in. Pop all the issues up on the wall, right? Stress, panic, there'll be so many of them to look at, but put them all up on the wall, and then review them in light of the goal. So in this case, customer receives a well-poured drink autonomously, right? So at this point, I like to tier these into 4 sections. So you can use this tiering method if it works for you. If not, your own prioritization techniques will probably work. But for me, anything that is an issue where if it will happen and no one is there to solve it, your user goal is entirely unmet, right? That is something you have to bake into your solution. Your automation has to be able to do this, whether it's a software chatbot side of things, whether it is a beer vending machine. It has to be able to meet all of those problems without someone being on hand, or if you've completely wasted your time in trying to automate it. The tier 2 side of things, this is a little bit like my example, right, where the goal's sort of met, but my customer's not going away happy, right? These are the things, if you can bake them in to your first iteration, great. If not, think about what support users are going to still exist during MVP and work out how that bakes into their workflow. More on that in a bit. Maybe it waits until version 2 before it's baked in. Tier 3 problems, right? This is where your user, their goal is met, but the journey to it is really painful, right? We don't like these things, but we have to probably admit that for first build, we may not solve these things. So this, at this stage of discovery, goes straight into a support user is going to deal with this until later down the line. And then beautifully, there are a few things that you get stressed about, and when you actually stop and think about it, don't matter. We overthink everything in all things, personal life, work life. This stuff, safe to ignore for right now. So tier up your things. This is very theoretical. Let's go back to the example. Customer receives a well-poured drink, right? So tier 1 problem, machine is out of drink. That is a big problem. The machine doesn't know it's out of the drink, and you buy the drink and it doesn't appear, tier 1 problem. Solve that, right? My problem, machine pours drink badly. It's sort of a tier 2 problem. Maybe it's a tier 1 problem if you're less British and polite. A tier 3 problem, right? The machine can't take a card payment, so maybe it's like, you got to put some cash in this, and I don't know what cash is anymore, so I get sad and go to another machine, and it's all a bit awkward. Tier 4 problem, it won't print me a receipt or a bill or the check, right? Like, no one probably cares about that anymore. It might still be an issue. So, once you've got all of those things up, you want to prioritize, you prioritize your tier 1 issues, you want to then do some solutionizing around them, right? And this is where having everyone in a room is great, because the machine is out of drink. So someone will turn around and be like, cool. The designer will be like, that's fine, we'll gray it out. That means there's no drink left. Perfect. UX wins, right? Then your engineer is like, yeah, but the system's going to have a sensor for when it's out of drink. I don't know what that level is. And the product manager goes, oh, I don't know what that level is either. Maybe we'll set a maximum limit. You can only order 3 pints, right? If you order 3 pints, the sensor is set so that when the beer in the machine is lower than 3 pints, grayed out, right? Then commercial's like, but then no one's going to buy the beer. We need them to buy the beer. So maybe we tell them about another machine. Go buy over there. And then your engineer comes back and is like, that's great, because our machines are linked, and they're in a network, and they're in a fleet, and they understand stock between the machines. And we can pump up and go to machine 4. Machine 4 has your beer, right? And it's this kind of like wacky ideating that pulls together. That means that you can very quickly ideate through some things that might work, right? So at this point, oh my God, on time, I will go very quickly through summary. We've done the happy path. We know the user goal. We've prioritized our issues, right? We've done some solutionizing. We have some solutions that might cover many workarounds. We have an initial idea of stuff our support user, that bloke who pops up behind me, is going to have to do, right? Now what we get to do is the fun bit, the bit that I, as UX researcher, love, right? We got to prototype it, which in the software side of things, right? Fairly simple, low fidelity prototype, throw out a usability test, unmoderated, moderated, all this sort of stuff. Hardware, though, lots of people turn around and go, how do you do UX for hardware when the hardware doesn't exist? And honestly, you can prototype anything. Right? You can Wizard of Oz absolutely anything, and you should be doing it, especially if you're in a hardware space. Right? This is us. This is an autonomous vehicle. It's a table with some boxes. This is also an autonomous delivery. That car isn't that autonomous, never mind. Same thing here, right? This was us user testing a concept, because what you can do is strip back the technology, because the technology is not massively important, right? As long as you retain what the user needs to do. And in these scenarios, the user just needed to pick up bags, right? So we simulate as much as possible, but we can strip back some of the hardware and some of the technical aspects of it, okay? And then you get to pretend to be the automation, which is lots of fun. Because usually in a UX session, people are like, I don't know how to do this. And you're like, how do you think you should do this? What's great is you don't even have to say that when you're pretending to be like a robot. You just stare at them blankly. It's great. It's so much fun. But maybe I'm a bit of a sadist. I don't really know. So what you want to do in this situation is simulate like all of those tier 1 issues, right? Simulate all of them up. I would have loved to have been in the beer example, right? I'd have loved to pour a really bad pint of beer and just stared at someone being like, what do I do? How do I do? What do I do? Where do I go? What do I do, right? The reason why this is good, though, as much fun as it also tells you so much, right? Because if you hold firm on not responding, the questions that they are asking you that you don't respond to show what worry is going on in their head, right? It's showing you what their thought process is. And then when they start trying to tap frantically at whatever tablet you've got on the side that's got a crazy wireframe on it that makes no sense, that's what they're going to do in this scenario when you're not there. And that means you now know how to bake in something in the copy to reassure them that everything is going to be fine, right? Because you know what they're thinking and what they're worrying about. And you've also worked out a workflow because they've shown you how they're going to troubleshoot with these things, right? This is IP sanitized of one of the first projects that we did when we got to the full end-to-end workflow. We had never tested this fully with its technology, but we had tested it in little bits and chunks. And we knew that all the chunks worked. We had no idea when we put it all together, hopefully it would work. And actually, I was amazed. I've never seen this many green ticks of how well you've done when something goes together, and this was a full end-to-end test. And the only thing that didn't quite work at the end here was just because of the context of where we'd put this solution. And we hypothesized that once it was out in the real world where it needed to be, it would be fine. So, what have you done so far? You've workflowed the half path, you know the user goal, you know the issues. For all your tier 1, maybe some of your tier 2 things, you've ideated on some solutions. You've had so much fun in the lab. I mean, you've got so much good data from the lab. It's not just all about having fun, right? You've ideally tested your solution end to end before it hits out to your customers, but you don't need to have done because ideally you've chunked it up in a state where everything works, right? And what's great about this is in these little chunks and these little iterations, you've basically created your go live product build, right? And you've tested it and you know that it works and you're actually not that stressed anymore. The final thing you need to think about is all of those edge cases that you've not baked into that solution, right? And this is possibly the hardest bit. This is where you have to craft what I'm calling the shadow user in an attempt to sound cool at a conference, but realistically, it's just your support person. Never mind. This is your person who is behind the scenes that keeps everything running, right? Because automation does not get rid of everyone, right? That is not the purpose of automation. It's to reduce the operational expense of lots of people down to very few, right? They are basically the Batman of your product, right? They are unseen in the background and will rock up to help when needed. So there are 3 things. You have to actively think about their experience as well and what their workflow looks like and what they, as essentially a product, are delivering for you. The 3 key things you have to think about when you're trying to design for your support user are how they find out there's an issue, sounds obvious, how they then get to engage with that system, and finally, the really crucial commercial part of this, what your milestones are for automation to support ratio, right? So taking those very quickly, alerting, very simple, right? Your user is either physically present, and if they are, great. Something visual or auditory will alert them that something's going wrong. Self-checkout machines, little beacon on the top, right? It might be that they're in a space where they can't see everything, so you might give them a handheld. That alerts them, right? That then is very similar to if your user's going to be remote, they have to have some kind of notification that says these are the issues. And if you really want to do this properly, automate the prioritization of those issues, right? Because your support user should be fixing problems. They shouldn't be working out what problems to fix, right? You should know the importance of the issues that are popping up, and you should take that control away from them so that they can focus on the actual job. Then what you need to provide them with is some sort of good system to engage with, right? So this UI that pops up that has 1 million buttons and would have genuinely stressed any of my design friends, right? This was easily accessible. It wasn't pretty, but the guy got into it very quickly. A consumer couldn't get into it, right? And it had absolutely everything that this guy needed to fix everything, right? It was function over style. Everything was on one page for him to get very quickly to a solution. Grid of very well-described buttons. I'm standing over his shoulder, right? Expecting a solution, also expecting that this shouldn't have been an issue, right? So it doesn't have to be pretty as long as it's clear. The final thing, and I won't dwell on this too much because it's, I guess, one of the harder parts of this, is you also have to think about the cost aspect of this, right? So ultimately, your automation is aiming to reduce your operational expenditure. So when you think about the ratio of support people you have to your automation, if you have a large ratio, i.e. lots of automation, very few people, faster ROI, commercial are happy with you. More room for bad UX, though, if you haven't thought about this. If you have a smaller ratio, your ROI is going to be much longer, it's going to be harder with clients to talk about, but your UX is better. It's a gradual thing, right? Set yourself some milestones, stress test through development, and what you can do by that is work out the frequency of your issues, the necessary support for good UX, and that impact on ROI timelines. And what's great about that is it makes resourcing conversations easier. You want an ROI of here, I need this many more people to bake this kind of production into it. You don't? We roll forward, support is a bigger issue. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is everything. Thank you so much. Here are some stuff you can come and talk to me about that's kind of outside the talk, that I like.
AJ, as a favor, I'd like you to repeat after me 3 words.
3 words.
3 words.
Uh-huh.
Massive.
Massive.
Autonomous.
Autonomous.
Aluminum?
Aluminium.
See, it wasn't that hard. We got there. We got there.
Oh, we made it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that all right? Is it okay for us to differ on this?
I'd like to think we agree.
Huh.
Yeah.
Disagree and commit, right? I love it.
He's not wrong. So what is it like to meaningfully engage with your users?
Mm-hmm. So actually, this is a great question, and this comes into more of the specifics of how you build that prototyping session, right? So in this moment, how you're wanting to engage with the users is, we normally set it up, depending on how much we know about what the solution is going to be. Run the happy path, don't talk to them. Any issues that pop up, we kind of simulate. Then we'll start simulating some problem issues with those users. And then from there, they will start to go, okay, well, what about this? What about this? I might fix it this way. I might fix it this way. And then you almost improvise, right? It's more of an unstructured usability test because, again, you can Wizard of Oz anything. So if they turn around and go, I think the best way to do this is to have a foot button that, like, I don't know, retracts the drink into the top, it pours down another pint, and it starts again. You're like, cool, all right, let's work it through, right? The drink comes down, it's not pouring very well, do what you think's right, and they're doing this, or nothing on the floor, and you put the beer on and do this and go, and they're like, yeah, it's weird, it doesn't feel intuitive, right? So the way I kind of engage on that is, yeah, just get them to come up with crazy ideas,
Okay.
and then role play them, like role play it out.
Wonderful. And then, when it came to the nature of the prototyping that you were doing, can you tell us a little bit about like what some of the goals were, as well as a little bit about the context, maybe some of the environment?
Yeah. So the kind of the goals of that concept testing is you getting comfortable that once you're not standing over it as the UXer on it, or your product person isn't standing over it, that the thing can be done. And once you're comfortable that you know how the thing can be done, then the box of technology you put around it, you just have to be in touch with those engineers and chat with them and make sure that they don't change what the core engagement is in the way they build the automation around it. So in the delivery system side of things, right, ultimately you strip all the technology back, it's boxes, you pick up some bags, providing whatever automation we put behind that doesn't hide the boxes, turn the boxes upside down, or do something that means they can't literally go, let's go, right? Then you're onto a winner, because you know that in its simplest form, the user can do it. But it's about having that kind of cross-functional thing as well. So like when we're doing this, we will be in heavy communication with the designers, with the engineers, with the product team. Like it's one unit that has to make decisions, because everyone's got their expertise. We bring in the very basic, UX researchers, we bring in the very basic, like, can-do thing, good, right? Everyone else does the more technical stuff, but we make sure that that core simplistic, like, need is still met, no matter what crazy bells and whistles we put on it.
Yeah, I'm debating where the mic drop was there, whether or not it's go, like all things multidisciplinary, product development, or what was it? Me make thing good.
User do thing right, good.
User do thing right, good.
Yeah,
all right.
And that's the UX goal, right? Like.
AJ King, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, mate.